Jay Young is going to be our first guest on the program to start us out on this Tuesday. And, Jay, I want to welcome you to the program, sir. You're live across North America. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir, for spending a few minutes with us here on the program to talk about this. And since you're a brand new voice on the program, tell folks a little bit about you and what you do. Then we'll get started. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, well, my family's been in the business since 1915. So we've had 4 generations of our family in the old business. My great-grandfather had 12 kids. And if you're a man, you're in the old business, and if you're a woman, you're married to somebody in the old business. And we have a long cycle and generations and decades and number of years, and seeing these oil and gas prices either moving up, moving down, doing whatever, we have to do, and doing whatever it takes in this old business, to make a living, and we love it, and it's something that's been a lot of fun, but it's also been frustrating for us. And so I run a company out of Dallas called King Operating Corporation. We have I've got full staff of people. We have assets all over the country, in Wyoming, Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to drill in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas than it is in Wyoming and Colorado, only because of the government. State regulations are tougher there, which I'd love to talk about, but that's kind of what we do. So we have investors that invest in funds, and they receive monthly income, they receive tax benefits while we scale the investment. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about what's going on as far as maybe those investments are concerned in light of what's going on with the president announcing the United States is going to be banning imports of Russian oil. And some are saying this is going to be a major escalation in the international response to Moscow's invasion of the Ukraine. Now, based on what you're saying about having assets in different parts of the United States, no doubt you're going to be keeping an eye as to the developments on the world stage when it comes to driving the price of oil. Talk about the president's move this morning as far as banning imports of Russian oil. How is this going to work? Will this be immediate, or will this be a gradual process where we just kind of phase this out, if you will? Well, hopefully it's not gradual, because prices came up really high right after that. They're at $5 a barrel right now. But, man, I tell you what, and if you need 700,000 barrels a day, which we do from Russia, we need their low-grade oil to produce, asphalt and things of that nature. And all of a sudden you just say, well, hey, you know what? We're going to cut it off because we don't want to do business with Russia. Right. I can understand that from some points, but we're definitely going to have to pay the price at the gas pump. And especially if this continues. Now, how this could continue is if other countries follow suit and start not buying that Russian crude, because they produce 11 million barrels a day. Our demand is 100 million barrels a day, so they produce 10, 11% of all the oil that we need in the world. And if everybody follows the same suit, it's going to shorten or decrease the supply around the country and around the world, and we're not going to have that oil, and when we need it, we're not going to have it, and the price will go up. Well, do you also see this maybe as a clear disadvantage, say, because if we do go into some combat state of readiness as to what's going on involving Ukraine and Russia, could this maybe hamper or slow down military developments if oil is not available, or if it's extremely expensive out there? Could this maybe affect security in the United States, maybe in the long term? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, when you don't have the oil that you need in the United States, now this isn't necessarily a Russia-Ukraine situation. It's been going on since the pandemic. And the reason why is because we were drilling for oil and gas, drill, baby, drill, 14 million barrels a day in the United States. We're riding high, and all of a sudden Russia, Saudi Arabia come over before the pandemic, and they dump a tremendous amount of oil on our markets at 30-40% discounts because they're trying to flood our supply over here to put us out of business.
Mm-hmm.
To put all the American oil and gas companies out of business. And then the pandemic happened, so we had an oversupply. Plus, because our demand went way down during the pandemic, so then prices went negative. But then we never really got back going again. I mean, it was kind of like we had 75% of our rigs go
right.
off the market during the pandemic. We're halfway home. We have about 55% of the rigs that are drilling for oil and gas today that were drilling it before the pandemic. But we're not drilling for oil in the United States because of government regulations, lack of capital with our institutions, and public companies are just deciding not to drill.
And take this a step further, with all of those players being out of the market, like you mentioned, only about 50 or so rigs that are operating at this point. Where do you see the prices going here? As far as what the audience you are talking with, mainly over-the-road truck drivers, I mean, they're going to feel this at the pumps. Diesel's going up in dramatic fashion, and so is the prices for the vehicles back home, like for unleaded, regular unleaded, things like that. Where do you see this going from your vantage point?
The challenge I see is it's not coming down anytime soon. And so if you're paying $4, I paid four something the other day when I was coming back from Houston. You're going to pay $4. It's going to go to $5. It may not come down for that for a long time. Now, where does it go above that? I don't know. It could go to $6, $7, $8. It could go crazy.
Well,
if a few things happen in the world markets. But the problem with your drivers and your gasoline prices is they're not going to come down anytime soon because nothing's helping it. I mean, the government's not coming in. We have so many problems. There's nothing to help us.
Does this mean you think we might see maybe a ramping back up of, say, the fracking that we talked about for so long, last couple of years or a few years ago? I mean, the United States was like the leading energy producer in the world through oil and gas, fracking operations, and things like that. And then we had the bust cycle with the oil industry, and now we're just trying to maybe get our feet back up underneath us as we go forward here. Does this maybe put the urgency on of ramping fracking back up in this country?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. But you have three other challenges. I mean, that's what I was reading this morning about this, and they were saying we need the frackers, but they didn't like us a few years ago, and now they're coming back going, oh, hey, by the way, would you mind start drilling again, because we need the oil, which is not necessarily, it's hard to just start back up. I mean, it takes billions of dollars to get this going to where we need to get it going, and because if the government says yes and the institutions aren't going to give us money, now that's a problem. And if the public companies, if the boards, if the shareholders, if they say, hey, we're selling your stocks, if you start to drill for oil and gas, if you increase your rig count, we're going to sell your shares, then the shareholders or the board will stay the course and not drill for oil and gas. That's what I'm saying is right now there's just really not a lot of good things happening for the oil and gas companies, like for our funds.
Right.
We're doing great. Our investors are doing great. I mean, it's crazy, but for the consumer buying gasoline, it's going to be tough, and it's going to be tough for a long time because I don't see anything that's helping support. There's no real big support in $4 gas, $5 gas.
When you look at the environmental rules and regulations that have been put in place since the Biden administration went into office out there, do we maybe need to relax some of those environmental rules to encourage more drilling, more fracking, and things like that? Do you think some of the environmental rules might be holding some of this back, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you see that?
I mean, that is definitely true. and that would be very helpful if we could do that. But the challenge is that we're just not seeing anything. And that's one. I mean, it's kind of like if I did a pie chart and I said, okay, so why aren't we drilling for oil and gas in the United States? And I did a pie chart and I said, okay, hey, what about institutional money? They've got hundreds of billions of dollars. That's one part. Is that 20-30% probably? What about the boards on public companies? Okay, there's another 20-30%. The government, okay, here it is. Supply challenges with Ukraine, Russia, us supplying, there's another. So, I mean, it's not like there's any one thing that somebody could just go over there and turn on the switch. I was on Jim Bohannon the other night, and this lady called in from Iowa, and very nice, and she said, well, Mr. Young, you're from Texas. Why don't you just get a bunch of you Texans together and y'all get in the back room and just go, hey, I guess she'd watched Dallas and J.R. Ewing too much or something. But
Sure.
She said, why don't you just grab some of those guys and y'all just start drilling for oil and gas? And I said, man, that would be awesome. With if you have a couple $100 billion, or if you know somebody that has, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this, Jay. I'm going to break for a minute for some commercials. Very interesting when you look at how all of this indeed is interconnected. Drivers, you're welcome to jump in. 888-876-2336 or 8888 Road Dog. And again, the breaking news story happening earlier today. President Biden announcing the United States is going to be banning imports of Russian oil. And the move comes as Western allied nations work to sever Moscow from the global economy, basically to punish Vladimir Putin for his unprovoked aggression. We are talking about this story coming down the pike earlier today. President Biden announcing the United States is going to be banning imports of Russian oil. Major news story that is happening. This is going to be the leadoff on the evening news on all of the channels tonight. This is obviously going to have a big impact as far as the prices at the pumps and what does it mean for you in the trucking industry. We've got in-depth coverage of this for this afternoon on the program, where we're starting out with Jay Young. He is with King Operations, an oil and gas expert. And Jay, again, appreciate you joining me on the program. Let's go first up to Miles, who's on the phone with us. And Miles, what do you think? You're on with Jay Young. Question or comment for him?
Hey, Mark. Okay. Well, I think it's all planned. It's all falling into place because it's war on oil, gas, and natural gas, and diesel trucks and cars. So they're winning.
Okay, very good. Miles, thank you for that. What do you think, Jay? You look at what's going on in the state of California, that leaders there want to put an outright ban on traditional fossil fuel like diesel and unleaded by moving in more environmentally favorable vehicles like, the electric cars, trucks, and things like that. What do you think about what he said as far as the maybe a conspiracy action with that?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, how much of these guys, politicians, are just plain ignorant. But I think about that in the sense of, okay, so I understand them wanting to go clean by 2035, 2045, whatever.
Right.
That's a long time from now. What about today? Our demand for oil is not going to go away today, and they need to realize that, and it needs to be done gradually, more than just all of a sudden. I did see 2 Teslas on the road the other day instead of 1. Normally you may see 1. Well, the other day I saw 2 at the same time. I'm like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute, man. You see 1,000 cars and you see 2 Teslas, you're like, okay, well, hey, they're coming. But it's going to take time. And I'm not worried about a year from now. Or I don't know if they're – like I said, I'm not sure if they're that much of a politician or they're just that – I don't say stupid. That's a bad word. My wife and my mom would come out of her grave to slap me. But I'm just saying, why wouldn't you think it's like cutting off Russian oil? Why do you want to cut off Russian oil when we need it? We need it. We're not going to pay more at the pump.
Well, and the other side of that, aren't we a main exporter of oil as well? Aren't we sending oil out overseas to other countries?
Not as much as we were before. Yeah.
What's that?
Not as much as we were before. We need 20 million barrels of oil in the United States every day. 20 million barrels. That's our appetite. That's how much we need. when we were at 14,500,000 barrels a day, we were sending oil out because our refineries simply couldn't refine all the oil here, and we needed other types of oil from other places. So, yes, it does take time. It will be there, not anytime soon, but it's gonna be there. But it's just we're not there, especially right now.
And as far as like maybe new refinery production in this country, I was reading a story the other day that the last time there was a new refinery completely built in the United States was over 10 years ago. Are those numbers pretty accurate from what you have read? I mean, if you're going to be putting in, or a company wants to put in, a refinery, they've got to show some return on investment, profitability. In other words, so is there a profit line maybe in refineries being built in this country here? Can they make money, in other words?
Good question, and I know at higher prices they can, but it would cost so much money for the regulations and the attorneys and all the different. I'd hate to see all the regulations. It'd be bigger than an encyclopedia, if you remember the old encyclopedias, because of all the regulations and things you can't do. It'd be like 400,000 things you can't do, because they cost a lot of money, and the return. That's what I'm saying. The government needs to come in and help us with that. They need to help us with refineries here in the United States. They need to help us with the drilling of oil in the United States. That's where we fix this problem. It isn't blaming OPEC because they're not giving us enough oil. It's not blaming Putin because, he's starting a war. It's not blaming anybody. Taking responsibility and saying, okay, we're going to tell the government and all the state regulations to let us drill for oil in the United States,
right?
And we're going to do whatever it takes, and then fixing the problem and then moving forward.
Some folks have said that, we need to maybe relax some of the regulations involving the protected, I think it's called the so-called wetlands, where there's maybe going to be protected species and things like that. Do we need to look at that as well? Could that be another viable source of oil that we can maybe get a hold of pretty quick?
Absolutely, 100%. We need to open that up. But then don't forget, there's still your institutions, which takes, one rig, you'll spend $100 million a year with one rig. And we need to put 200 to 300 more rigs to work to really get us out of our jam that we're in right now. And the institutions just aren't coming in. And even if you did put 200 rigs to work, you have to talk to these public companies that are the ones that they can put them to work. You have to talk them into drilling because they're not wanting to drill. What was it? Pioneer the other day said, Pioneer Natural Resource. I just saw Sheffield on CNBC. But they said the other day, even if oil goes to 200, we're not going to start drilling again. I guess I can call BS on that because economics look really, really good at $200 a barrel, and it's still all about the mighty dollar, especially for your shareholders.
Yeah.
But there's just so many different things that it takes. It's just not one. There's not one size fits all.
Yeah. It's a myriad of things that are going to factor into this. Jay, I'm almost out of time. I got to get ready to wrap it up. Where can folks find you up on the web? What's the best way to reach out to you and see what you guys do? Where can they go?
Yeah, we're at King Operating, King Operating.com. Like I said, I've got my book, The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing. If you go on our website and you want to know, hey, am I right for oil and gas investing? You can fill out an assessment on our website. I'll send you a brand new autographed copy of my book, The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing, which I need to change up, man, because of all the different things that are going on. But it's an exciting time. But KingOperating.com. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Very good, sir. Thank you very much.